Incredible revelation. Poor girl discovers hidden truth that transformed a billionaire's paralyzing past. Lucy squeezed her eyes shut, her heart racing as her fingers brushed the cracked surface of the old journal. It smelled of dust and regret, yet it sparked a fire in her gut. Jonathan Blake's words resonated through the musty air of the secretive corner of the library she had stumbled into just moments ago. What began as an escape from her grueling shifts at the diner transformed into a confrontation with a world she had only dared to dream about. The relentless truth spilled like ink on the pages, a secret entangling her life with the reclusive billionaires, built upon a tragedy that shattered not just his childhood but echoed through hers. She bit her lip, feeling the familiar weight of her family's expectations draped across her shoulders. How could she let this opportunity slip away? Her mind racing, she envisioned herself poring over the heart of scientific discovery, an eager student mapping the future. Yet, the thought of wielding Jonathan's past the pain, the loss as a stepping stone made her stomach churn. Was she driven by ambition or blind selfishness? Lucy pulled away from the journal and scanned the room, as if the dusty shelves could offer clarity. She wasn't just Lucy from Crestwood. She was clawing her way up and out, yearning for more than the diner's fluorescent lights and grease-stained aprons. Yet, Jonathan's scars mirrored her own town's struggles, tragedies hidden behind stoic faces, far from the grand tales of success. Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. Battling the tangled emotions, Lucy resolved to understand Jonathan rather than exploit his vulnerabilities. Yet, as she continued reading, her thoughts darkened. A corporate rival seemed poised to smear Jonathan's name with a wicked scheme that would paint him as an unethical businessman. Every page turned felt like a new stab of urgency. Could she really stand by and watch the truth suffocate under the weight of lies? The guilt swelled within her, a gnawing weight that twisted in her stomach. She imagined her parents, their tired faces lighting up at the mention of her future and education they fought for, the sacrifices they made boiling down to mere ambitions built on the ruins of another's grief. What kind of daughter would she be if she traded their dreams for her own? Like Jonathan's childhood dream extinguished too soon, she feared losing herself amidst the desperation. As Lucy climbed deeper into Jonathan's world, that once distant ambition had become a siege, a fortress of ideals crashing down on her wavering spirit. What was the ethical path? Betrayal to save Jonathan or standing firm with the truth? Risking everything? She could feel the storm surging inside her, a tempest of righteousness battling against the seductive allure of success. What lay ahead felt both exhilarating and chilling, her next decisions teetering on an unforgiving edge. The fragile silence of the library now felt like an echo chamber, amplifying her doubts. With turmoil thrumming through her bones, she made her choice, one that would either lead her to clarity or unravel the very fabric of her existence. And just then, in the dim light of that dusty corner, darkness loomed larger than her choice, whispering secrets that threatened to upend everything she had fought for. The journal lay open, its pages filled with the raw agony of Jonathan's past, and Lucy felt an electric urgency coil tightly around her. The revelation that had begun as a flicker of ambition now roared into a consuming fire, propelling her toward an inevitable confrontation. She knew she had to act, yet her moral compass spun wildly: construction or destruction, truth or complicity. Determined to harness Jonathan's truth instead of weaponizing it, she resolved that understanding would be her first step. She took a deep breath and bent over the journal again, scrutinizing each line, trying to place herself in Jonathan's shoes. This wasn't just his story. It was their story, two lives intertwined by twists of fate. Suddenly, a plan began to form. If she could gather enough evidence to counter the corporate conspiracy looming over Jonathan, she wouldn't just save a man. She could unearth the lies that had long shadowed her own life. She envisioned herself as an investigator, her old self in the diner fading away. This was her moment to rise from mere survival to genuine impact, not through selfish ambition but through a drive to uphold justice. Lucy pushed aside her doubts, her heart steadied by a growing sense of purpose. She would sneak into Jonathan's office, where the legal documents and communications detailing the attacks were likely to be stashed. The desire to expose the truth would give her the strength to plunge into the unknown, even if it meant breaking the law herself. As she plotted her next moves, her mind flickered to Jonathan's face. The weight, the solitude, he had been molded by pain. She realized their connection could transcend empathy. It could morph into a partnership built on mutual strength. With Jonathan's unique insights into his own challenges and her relentless determination, they could not only defend against the threats but redefine their destinies. However, what awaited her beyond the pages of the journal was a potential landmine. Lucy had witnessed the dark ruthlessness of the corporate world, where greed ruled and morals were squashed underfoot. Every assembly line worker she had served at the diner bore the scars of indifference. She was no stranger to the pain of being disregarded. The possibility of betrayal loomed large. How would Jonathan react if he knew she had read his deepest wounds without his permission? Lucy's grip on the journal tightened, her fingers tracing the bittersweet ink. The stakes had never been higher, as she walked the knife's edge between achieving her ambitions and honoring the sanctity of another's reality. Still, her heart thrummed with an instinctive belief that this was the birth of something greater. With her decision made, she slipped the journal back onto the shelf, stood tall, and brushed the dust from her jeans. It was time to transform her conviction into action. She would become a beacon of truth for Jonathan and many like him, standing against the corruption that plagued her life and theirs. While adrenaline surged in her veins, Lucy felt the weight of her choice settle in her stomach, a complex mixture of fear and exhilaration. She had made a decision. She would face Jonathan and reveal she'd discovered his secret. But the real question gnawed at her. Was she ready to risk everything, including her burgeoning friendship with him, for a truth that could shatter the fragile calm between them? With that question hanging in the air, Lucy stepped out of the library, the dim light morphing into a blinding brightness outside. The world awaited her, a world fraught with danger and deceit. And as she took her first step toward Jonathan, she wondered if she could truly wield the power of truth to save them both, or if the revelation would tear them apart. The moment of confrontation loomed on the horizon. Would Lucy be able to trust her instincts when all she had was a fading resolve? The sun hung low in the sky, casting long shadows across the bustling street as Lucy approached Jonathan's office. Each step felt heavier than the last, burdened by uncertainty. The journal's revelations now pulsed in her mind, urging her on despite the trepidation gnawing at her gut. What if revealing Jonathan's truth only served to isolate him further? Or worse, what if he rejected her help entirely? She paused outside the door, mind racing as memories flickered back to simpler times, coffee breaks at the diner, shared laughter, and the brief moments of connection that had stretched like rubber bands between them. Each recollection tangled in her heart, battling against the urgency that pushed her forward. She needed to remember that Jonathan's pain was not just an abstract burden. It was unique to him. With a steadying breath, she pushed the door open and stepped inside, the familiar scent of his office wafting around her. Disarray littered the desk, crumpled papers and half-finished coffee cups, each telling silent stories of stress and anxiety. But this chaos represented something more significant. It was the front line of Jonathan's battle against the corporate forces that threatened to engulf him. "Lucy?" He looked up, surprised and a little guarded. His brow furrowed, and she could sense the weight on his shoulders, the walls he had built to keep the world at bay. "Can we talk?" The words came out stronger than she felt, her voice echoing with conviction she didn't quite own. "Sure," he replied, moving aside to make room for her. As she settled into a chair across from him, Lucy felt the moment teetering on the brink of something significant. She had rehearsed the conversation in her mind, yet the exact words eluded her. Instead, she looked him in the eyes, an invitation to honesty. "I found your journal," she started slowly, gauging his reaction. "I read it." Jonathan's face hardened, a mixture of pain and the instinct to retreat forming a storm within him. You shouldn't have done that. I know, Lucy rushed to explain. But it opened my eyes to what you've been going through. You can't fight this alone. She paused, seeking to connect rather than to crown herself savior. I want to help you. He leaned back in his chair, arms crossed tightly over his chest, a wall re-erecting itself. Help? By exposing my private thoughts? You don't get it. You don't know the stakes. I might not know everything. She shot back, her frustration spilling forth. But I know enough. Those feelings, your pain, they're not just yours. They're a reflection of the corporate damage we've all faced. If we partner, maybe we can turn this into something stronger. Yet, she could see the battle raging within him. Part of Jonathan wanted to allow her in, to share strategies, but fear of vulnerability warred against that desire. The scars from countless betrayals clung to him like shadows, each one threatening to consume the flickering light of trust. She recognized the moment as a test, a pivot point in their relationship. She had placed her vulnerability on the table, and he had the power to either stab it or nurture it. Look, I get it, she continued, her voice softening. Opening up is terrifying. But we can't fight this alone. We're stronger together. As silence enveloped the room, Jonathan's expression softened momentarily. Was there a flicker of hope? Or was it just a mirage? The distance between collaboration and isolation hung precariously, bound by the frail threads of trust. The air thickened, electric tension cultivating one final time as Lucy braced herself for the fallout of his decision. What had she initiated? Would the uncertainty that had forged this moment lead them toward partnership or sever their connection permanently? Okay, he finally said, although the note of hesitation dripped through his voice like rain on a fragile leaf. Let us talk about its strategies and the next steps. But no promises. As the conversation unfolded, Lucy gained confidence, her plan evolving in real time. She sought to weave her insights with Jonathan's to unearth the truth, ready to fight the battle that lay ahead. Together, they would collectively rise or falter under the pressure of external forces. Yet, as she contemplated their shaky alliance, the potential consequences of her revelations loomed ominously, both an opportunity for empowerment and a possible path to ruin. Lucy, he interrupted her thoughts, when we confront this, there's no turning back. Are you ready for that? Her heart raced at the intensity of his question. Did she truly understand the depth of commitment she was about to undertake? Ready as I'll ever be, she responded, her voice resolute, even while uncertainty gnawed at her confidence. But as they began to strategize, a sudden realization struck her: this was only the beginning. If they were to topple the structures of deceit and corruption, their journey would demand more than just action. It would require unfathomable courage. Even as they mapped their course, Lucy couldn't shake off the feeling that greater threats were shadowing them. Could she truly harness the explosive power of truth, or would it prove to be their downfall? The weight of the moment pressed down like a storm cloud, ready to unleash its fury. As they continued their conversation, the walls around them seemed to pulse, hinting at the challenges that lay ahead, of battles that could not just threaten their partnership but shatter everything they knew. And who would emerge victorious when the dust settled? Lucy noticed Jonathan's fingers tapping nervously on the desk, a rhythm that matched the racing beat of her heart. The plans they began to outline laid bare beforehand seemed daunting, yet invigorating. Each strategy was like a stepping stone, leading them deeper into a turbulent sea with waves of uncertainty crashing around them. She could only hope that they wouldn't drown before reaching shore, but the stakes were too high to back down now. Let's break this down, she suggested, keeping her tone steady. You mentioned the corporate tactics they're using against you. Can you detail those? He hesitated, his gaze flickering away as if he were peering into the gears of a broken system. It's a calculated move, he explained slowly, targeting my weaknesses, obscuring data. If they can spin the narrative, they can turn my own employees against me. I can't afford to lose anyone in this fight. Lucy felt a chill pass through her. The fear masked under his bravado was palpable. It mirrored her own internal hesitation, creeping into her mind like a thief. They implemented fear tactics, she mused, reflecting on her own professional encounters that had exposed her to greed and corruption. But that S where we can turn things around. If we activate transparency, no, he interrupted abruptly, voice hardening like steel. Don't you see? If we openly resist them, it'll give them a chance to retaliate in ways we can't anticipate. We need to be covert. Her pulse quickened at his intensity. I understand the need for caution, but we can't operate strictly in the shadows. We need allies, people who'll back us up. A flicker of conflict flashed across his face. That's a risk I'm not willing to take. Lucy leaned forward, challenging his stance. Jonathan, without risking anything, how will we ever uncover the truth? We may need to be bold if we want to uncover their tactics. You trust me with this, right? The question lingered in the air, heavy with unspoken truths. The tension bristled like static electricity. He was torn, caught between fear and a looming desire for change, and she could see it playing out before her. I get why you're scared, she continued, her tone softer now, but hiding one T-shield you. You know the illusions they've built around their empire. They're counting on people like you to cower in fear. But we have to challenge that. We can do it smartly and effectively if we combine our strengths. His eyes searched hers for answers, seeking a refuge amid his storm. It's not just my world at risk anymore. Your career, you may lose everything. But what if this is my chance to finally break free from that constant worry? Lucy replied, her determination igniting within her. I've spent long enough sitting on the sidelines, afraid to jeopardize what little stability I possess. We can reshape our destinies together. It's time to rise. A silence stretched between them, a palpable current of shifting emotions and urgent possibilities. Jonathan appeared to struggle with the implications of her words, then finally let out a weary sigh. Perhaps I need to consider that, but we need a solid plan in place. That means strategy above all else. Lucy felt a swell of pride. His acknowledgement was a flicker of hope, revealing the possibility of partnership to combat both their fears. Then let us create one together, she proposed. We can experiment with protocols for communication, document data, gather intelligence without raising alarms. He nodded slowly, the weight lifting slightly from his shoulders. His trust felt tentative, but it was there, like a delicate plant yearning for sunlight. As they exchanged ideas, she realized how far she'd come, no longer just a spectator timidly shadowing his expertise, but an active contributor facing challenges head-on. But just as their conversation shifted into a cooperative rhythm, a nagging doubt tugged at her. As thrilling as this newfound alliance felt, what lay beneath the surface? Was she ready for the potential fallout of moving forward? The question loomed, unfurling dark edges that threatened to ensnare her. Resolve. Would Jonathan's reluctance be their undoing? Or could this fragile connection usher in a new era for both of them? Let us set a time to meet again, she proposed, but a strange unease lingered in her chest. I want to make sure we're not pushing too hard too soon. Agreed, he replied, the gravity of her words grounding them both. Yet, deep down, Lucy sensed the winds of change beginning to shift as they stood to leave. A hint of determination ignited between them. They were on the precipice of something monumental. But as her heart raced with excitement, an unshakable feeling crept in. The most difficult part of their journey loomed just ahead. What awaited them beyond that threshold felt both exhilarating and terrifying, as if they were about to unlock a truth that could either liberate or destroy them. Could they walk that line without falling into the abyss? Lucy left the office with a flurry of conflicting emotions swirling in her mind. The exhilaration of their conversation felt like a double-edged sword, cutting both ways. Could their partnership truly reshape their destinies? Or was she overestimating their chances? Each pulse of her heartbeat echoed her fear, reminding her of how precarious their position had become. Returning to her apartment, the dim light cast shadows on the walls, stretching long fingers of doubt through the corners of her thoughts. She paced, contemplating their plan. Now that she had taken a decisive step toward advocacy, each strategy inhabited by the specter of risk felt more vivid and immediate. Jonathan's reluctance to rally allies stung her like a sharp object, nagging at her determination. Did he fully understand the implications of what they were embarking on? She forced herself to focus. A surge of pride swept through her. This was her moment to redefine herself. No longer was she the woman who hesitated on the edge, always scared to tread into deeper waters. Lucy had conjured her voice amidst the tumult and offered Jonathan a chance at change and opportunity she yearned for herself. Inspired yet unsettled, she tapped into her notes, organizing her thoughts into coherent strategies. Each bullet point appeared as a lifeline: communication protocols that invited trust, methods to gather intelligence without disclosing their intentions. She felt empowered but also acutely aware that empowerment demanded courage. As night draped over the city, she pulled out the document Jonathan had entrusted to her. It outlined their opponent's strategies, every tactic woven like a web embroidered with secrecy. Could their fight against it yield results? She scrutinized every line, commitment igniting within her to comprehend the entirety of the battle landscape. But self-doubt loomed large, gnawing at her resolve. What if they were wrong? Could Jonathan's fearful approach lead them into an even deeper conflict? The phone rang, jarring her back to the moment. It was Jonathan. His voice carried resolute resolve but tinged with an urgency that made her heart race. "Lucy, I've done some thinking. We can't wait too long to act. The longer we're in the shadows, the more power they consolidate. Then let us set a date," she replied, feeling a flicker of hope ignite. "Let us mobilize. We'll prepare everything we need while researching potential supporters discreetly." "Right," he said, the tension of excitement palpable, "but they will be watching for signs." His caution haunted her, and she could hear it echoing in her thoughts. Every word became a nail, drawing her closer to a familiar worry. But as much as the fear surfaced, she had fought too hard to back down now. "We're not going to let fear be our master," she asserted, her voice growing stronger. The conviction in her words unfolded a new light. Despite the looming risks, the prospect of action ignited a sense of liberation. Lucy envisioned allies, people who believed like they did, waiting in the wings for their time to rise. As the call concluded, Lucy sat back and reflected on the evolving partnership. The knots in her stomach tightened, but clarity began to form. With each bit of planning, she was reclaiming her narrative. If she wanted to carve her own path, she needed to lean into discomfort and challenge Jonathan's hesitations too. Adrenaline coursed through her veins, propelling her toward a call to the unknown. She recognized that the time for action was approaching quickly. Her laptop pinged a notification, snapping her from her thoughts. It was a new article about corporate corruption in their industry, complete with names and detailed allegations. Before she even processed it, the implications struck her. Could this be the catalyst they needed? A sign that others were willing to confront the shadows that surrounded them. Fingers poised over the keyboard, she felt the weight of that decision tug once more. Would she dive deeper into this unfolding story, put herself out there, on the edge of scrutiny while navigating dangerous waters? The prospect thrilled and terrified her, but the potential for discovery shimmered like a beacon in the fog of uncertainty. Was she ready to step into this new realm of awareness, potentially exposing not just truths but also herself? As she prepared for her next moves, a surge of determination propelled her thoughts. Their journey had just begun, yet the heart of the challenge awaited. What would happen when the truth surfaced and inevitably collided with their fragile plans? Lucy took a deep breath, her fingers hovering above the keys. The world outside her window blurred in the shapeless shadows of night. She felt as if the walls of her apartment were closing in, each inch threatening to suffocate the resolve she had fought hard to cultivate. Beneath the rush of adrenaline, uncertainty trudged like a relentless shadow. Was she truly prepared to amplify her voice in a nascent crusade of truth? She knew the risks. Diving headfirst into an investigation meant inviting scrutiny, exposing her vulnerabilities to adversaries skilled at wrenching secrets from the timid. Jonathan's fears echoed again in her mind, urging caution with a dryness that felt almost oppressive. Yet another voice surfaced, one that whispered of opportunity, of not just standing by while the powerful continued to manipulate reality. Her laptop screen glowed with the article, spilling its secrets onto the digital canvas. Names surfaced, people she recognized, titans of industry whose smiles had always masked a darker underbelly. Waves of anger crashed within her. How had she turned a blind eye for so long? This knowledge represented not just her awakening, but a chance to ignite change. Lucy pulled up her notes on corporate tactics. She needed to arm herself with precise facts, scrutinize the allegations mentioned, connect the dots, and prepare for a confrontation not just of words but of ideologies. Empowerment could not flourish in hesitation. It thrived amidst the chaos of confrontation. With a slow but deliberate resolve, she began to outline her strategy. This time, Lucy shifted her focus from what could go wrong to what could go right. What if the very stakes that instilled fear could also bolster her resolve? She scribbled down potential scenarios. For every risk, she matched a counter-strategy documenting their steps meticulously to mitigate betrayal, gathering intel on potential backers who could act as shields rather than spectators. While Jonathan's hesitations stirred within her, so did her burgeoning belief that she could balance both courage and caution. The phone call with Jonathan had opened a door she had previously kept locked. They needed a plan, not just for their safety but for the future they envisioned. They wouldn't merely react to the machinations around them but be proactive architects of their reality. Was this the pivotal moment she had awaited? A chance to show Jonathan that leadership didn't always stem from the loudest voice, but could thrive in the strategy of a quieter resolve? But how do I persuade him? The question twisted through her, knotting her stomach tighter than before. She sat back, contemplating how to engage Jonathan differently. She recognized that his fears mirrored her own, and by addressing them, they could potentially overcome the inertia paralyzing them. As dawn nestled at the horizon, Lucy felt the first rays of ambition coaxing her awake. She prepared herself for another call. This was not merely a matter of strategic dialogue, it was about shifting Jonathan's mindset, galvanizing his hesitant energy into their vision of reality. Was she capable of this transformation? Could she empower not just herself but others around her? Determined, she dialed his number, the weight of sinking doubt dissolving with each ring. She had opened a vein of potential, and she needed to seize it. When he picked up, his voice was laced with a blend of exhaustion and renewed anticipation. "Lucy? Jonathan," she replied, her voice steady. "We need to talk strategy. I have some ideas that could change everything for us." The refreshing exhilaration of the moment surged within her, eclipsing her previous anxieties. Yet with this spark emerged a jolting realization. Could they unravel the spider web of deceit swiftly enough to stay ahead of their adversaries? As they dove into discussions and possibilities, Lucy felt the visceral heat of urgency enveloping her. The battle for integrity within their industry was no longer theoretical. It was a burgeoning reality they had to fight for together. What lay ahead was an unfolding tapestry of truths, ones that could ignite revolutions and illuminate the darkness concealing their adversaries. Could their collaborative resolve weather the impending storm, or would they find themselves swept away by the very currents they sought to contest? Lucy replaced the phone in its cradle, her heart still racing from the intensity of the conversation. She had tossed strategies back and forth with Jonathan, their dialogue morphing from cautious to committed. Each idea they exchanged lit a fire in her. She could feel the interplay of fear and ambition pulsating beneath her skin. This was not merely about uncovering secrets, it was about reshaping their reality into something she had always envisioned, something just beyond reach. Yet, as the excitement waned, self-doubt skimmed her consciousness. Could she genuinely see this through? The looming question weighed upon her, a stubborn anchor tugging at her resolve. She closed her eyes and pictured their competitors. Smug executives, aroma of predictability that spared no room for the unorthodox. Her conviction momentarily flickered. Was confronting them even prudent? Determined to gather her thoughts, Lucy returned to her laptop. The article she was analyzing still glowed ominously at her. Insidious names and veiled connections begged for exploration. She scrolled through her notes, seeking clarity amid the chaos. The hairs on the back of her neck stood at an end as she recalled Jonathan's unease. She needed to frame this narrative carefully, not just as a story of deceit but as a clarion call for change with purposeful strokes. She began drafting points for a presentation to Jonathan. Each bullet point evolved into a small strategy, a potential weapon. The first, tapping into the public's thirst for transparency. More than mere journalism, they could challenge the status quo, positioning themselves as thought leaders, vulnerable yet unapologetically resilient. Emerging from the cocoon of her thoughts, Lucy envisioned an audience not just numbers, but faces hungry for justice. Visualizing who might stand beside them, a subtle plan crystallized in her mind. She would need allies, individuals who had suffered under the corporate juggernaut, voices that could humanize their findings and lend credence to their endeavors. At that moment, a flicker of realization ignited her awareness. Perhaps she had underestimated her own ability to connect. In her previous roles, she had fostered relationships, spoken at events, but always as part of a collective. Now, she had the chance to cultivate a movement, one built on her tenacity and belief in transparency. Could she summon the courage to embrace not just her own vision, but also her capacity to galvanize others? As daylight filtered through the window, Lucy reached for her notebook. With a fiercer hand, she jotted down the stories of those wronged by corporate greed. Each name catalyzed a memory, a sense of urgency to act. She found herself replaying the moments she had spent listening to her sources, their frustrations echoing in her mind. It was empowering to realize she could transmute their pain into power by contextualizing it within her investigation. Fueled by the prospect of capturing these narratives, she felt her self-doubt retracing its steps. The light settled around her, and in that space, a transition occurred. The fear of failure shrank under the brilliant glow of potential. She was not simply a small cog. She was a catalyst. But her enthusiasm was cut short by the unsettling thought of Jonathan's reaction when she revealed her ideas. Would he understand the full weight of her ambition? Would he support her in harnessing the stories into a narrative fierce enough to cut through corporate resistance? She had yet to decipher how to persuade him without sidelining his apprehensions. A strategy rooted in collaboration, she resolved, would be pivotal. Suddenly, the office door creaked open, and there stood Jonathan, suspicion layering his features. "Lucy, we need to talk," he said, his tone revealing that the moment to face the uncertainty together had arrived. The stakes had never felt more real, and her pulse surged as anticipation coiled within her. Would they fortify their alliance or allow apprehension to dilute their strength? Lucy inhaled deeply, ready to confront the storm, ready to face the reality of their choices as they stood on the brink of their next moves. A question lingered: would their collaboration forge new paths, or would it unveil rifts that neither of them anticipated? Jonathan shifted his weight, the gravity of their situation evident in the crease of his brow. Lucy felt the weight in the air, a palpable mixture of uncertainty and potential. The moment they had been building toward was here, and every breath seemed to heighten the tension. "What is it?" she asked, her voice steadier than she felt. Each word pushed against the burgeoning doubts, a small defiance against her own insecurities. "Let us sit." Jonathan motioned towards the small conference table in the corner of the office, his posture tight. They sat, and Lucy could see the gears in his mind turning as he deliberated over the right words. Taking a deep breath, Lucy braced for the scrutiny of his gaze. She was resolute. If they were going to navigate this path together, she needed to present her ideas with conviction. "Jonathan, I have been thinking about where we can take this project," she began, flashing a determined smile that felt partially feigned. "We can tap into something larger than just uncovering corruption. Think about the powerful stories behind our findings. We could give a voice to those silenced by corporations." He arched an eyebrow, his skepticism evident. "And you think that would resonate? People don't always care about the tragedy, they just want the headlines." A prickling sensation of defensiveness crept in. His doubt wrapped around her like a vine threatening to choke her ambitions. Yet she pressed on, not allowing herself to retreat into insecurity. "What they want is authenticity. We can show them the human stories behind these headlines. Our pieces can become narratives of strength, resilience, and truth. We have to leverage that to shift public opinion, That's bold, Lucy." Jonathan leaned back, assessing her carefully. "And what if this backfires? What if we don't have the resources, the manpower to pull it off? His concerns echoed her own, yet something inside flickered anew. That very fear had almost extinguished her intentions before, but now it sparked resolve. I know it's ambitious, but think of what we could achieve. We would be doing more than just reporting. We'd be making a difference, she argued, her heart racing with each syllable. And we have a unique opportunity here. We can't let fear hold us back. He remained silent, but she could see the wheels turning. She had known Jonathan long enough to recognize when he was contemplating a challenge. All right, let us say we take this route. We can't do it alone, he finally replied, his tone cautious but yielding. We'll need people who can speak out. Do you have anyone in mind? Yes. A few contacts of mine have expressed their frustration with the system. They want to tell their stories. Excitement surged through her again, the potential was becoming clearer with every word. We'll need their perspectives to back up our findings. It isn't just a tale of corporate greed. It's their lives. The corners of Jonathan's mouth turned slightly up, and the tension between them began to dissipate. She could sense an opening, a chance to connect deeper with him, to bolster each other's courage. Okay, we can start reaching out, he said, though his voice was still tinged with skepticism. But this is a risk, Lucy. We need a solid plan if we're going to make it work. Lucy nodded, her pulse steadying as confidence transformed from abstract to tangible. She was here, actively shaping her destiny rather than being a passive witness. I'll draft a more detailed plan. We can split the tasks. I'll secure interviews and you can focus on gathering the data we need. Jonathan's expression shifted subtly. The initial doubt transformed into intrigue as he considered her suggestions. I'm still cautious, but I see where you're coming from, he admitted. If we're doing this, we need to be laser-focused and prepared for pushback. The stakes felt weightier now, but so did the excitement racing through her. With Jonathan on board, they could begin forging a movement that transcended their past work and stepped firmly into a future filled with promise as their conversation turned toward specifics. Lucy's mind raced with thoughts of the people she'd reach out to, the hidden voices that had waited long enough to be heard. Yet, as they began outlining their next steps, the shadow of potential conflict lingered. Who might stand against them in this pursuit? What obstacles awaited them on their truth-seeking journey? There were unanswered questions she desperately needed to address. The moment of truth was near, but the churning uncertainty loomed over her like a storm. Would their intentions lead them to victory or open Pandora's box? The next morning, Lucy woke with a blend of anticipation and trepidation gnawing at her insides. The air felt different after their conversation, charged with the burdens of their looming project. Armed with a newfound determination, she made a list of contacts who might be willing to share their experiences. She needed to solidify her own role, not just as a reporter but as an advocate for truth and for those who had been wronged. As she sipped her coffee, she scrolled through her phone, fleshing out the details of her plan. Each name brought a flood of memories, reminding her of the grit and resilience that had defined their struggles. One name in particular stood out: Maya, a woman who had bravely spoken out against the unethical practices of her former employer, a tech giant. Lucy had met her during a community meeting months ago, where her story had ignited a fire in Lucy's heart. She was about to call Maya when her phone buzzed with a message from Jonathan. Let us meet again at 2. We need to brainstorm logistical support. With a nod of resolve, Lucy finalized her contacts and then set her sights on drafting a more strategic outline for their initiative. She could no longer afford to dwell on self-doubt. The stakes were too high. By afternoon, she stood outside a quaint cafe where Jonathan had suggested they meet. As she stepped inside, the scent of freshly brewed coffee invigorated her, contrasting sharply with the nagging hesitation that still resided within. She smiled, mentally preparing to share her ideas, aware that this was her moment to assert her vision. Jonathan was already seated at a table in the back, fingers tapping on his laptop, the furrow in his brow replaced by an eager intensity. Hey Lucy, I've been thinking we need to have this plan mapped out in a manner that resonates with potential allies, he said, glancing up as she approached. Absolutely, she replied, spreading her notes across the table. I spoke with Maya, and she's on board. I really believe her insights will amplify our cause. Jonathan leaned back, his expression shifting from skepticism to intrigue. Good. Her experience could be pivotal. But we have to be cautious about how we approach these interviews. We're not just telling stories, we're inviting scrutiny. His reminder grounded her. Right. We'll need to prepare them for potential backlash. Their voices will hold weight, and we can't let them feel vulnerable. Agreed. Jonathan nodded, scrolling through her notes. This comprehensive angle could engage people more deeply, but we'll need to set clear guidelines for how we curate the narrative. The discussion flowed easily, and as they talked, Lucy found herself more confident than she had been in days. With each moment, she unearthed deeper layers of her own capabilities and resoluteness. The possibility that she could lead a movement was dawning on her attention, slowly but surely transforming into empowerment. As they outlined their structure, Lucy's thoughts wandered to what lay beyond this project. What would it mean to use her voice at this scale? The thrill mixed with fear, sparking another internal conflict. Would she be able to sustain such a bold course? Or would the weight of expectations crush her budding ambitions? Just then, Jonathan's gaze sharpened, and he interrupted her thoughts. We need to define our messaging carefully. If we're going to provoke thought, we will inevitably draw criticism. Are you ready for that? The question struck her. Fear rushed back in, but she reframed it as a challenge. It's a risk I'm willing to take. If we don't provoke, we won't create a substantial impact. Jonathan's respect flickered in his eyes, transforming an ordinary meeting into a collaborative campaign. They both knew the path ahead wouldn't be easy, but the barriers that felt insurmountable yesterday now seemed more like stepping stones. Yet as they prepared to finalize their ideas, an unexpected text from Maya caused Lucy's heart to race. Can we meet? Something urgent has come up. The words settled heavily in the air between them, bridging anticipation with dread. What could this urgent matter entail, and how would it influence their burgeoning mission? Lucy exchanged a glance with Jonathan. The unspoken acknowledgement of their fragile, yet ambitious journey solidified in that moment of uncertainty. With each step they took into the unknown, they were not only pursuing a story, they were redefining their own narratives. What would they uncover next, and how deeply would it transform their lives? The sun peeked through the window, illuminating the remnants of doubt clinging to Lucy's resolve. She had immersed herself in the world of corporate deceit, clawing her way up from a diner waitress to an advocate for truth. Each step, from the fateful moment she discovered Jonathan's journal to now, had marked her transformation and evolution from fear into undeniable strength. With Jonathan at her side, Lucy felt an electrifying sense of partnership. They became allies, fueled by their quest for justice. Together, they had devised a plan that illuminated the untold stories buried beneath corporate lies. Today was the day they would act on that plan, a culmination of intense preparations and sleepless nights. The cafe buzzed with energy, but Lucy was focused solely on Jonathan's determined face. So, we meet Maya in an hour, she reminded him. We'll outline our approach and set expectations. Right? Jonathan replied, a flicker of anticipation mixed with anxiety in his demeanor. She understands the stakes, but we have to make sure she's ready for the consequences of speaking out. Lucy nodded. Exactly. We will prepare her. It's not just about telling her story. It's about empowering her to reclaim it. The prospect of unveiling corporate corruption ignited a fire in her belly. They weren't merely uncovering the truth, they were reshaping societal narratives. With every meeting, every conversation, Lucy felt the weight of purpose transform her. She was no longer just an individual lost in the complexities of ambition, she was a catalyst for change. As they moved toward their scheduled meeting with Maya, uncertainty lurked beneath the surface. Would they succeed in unearthing the truth? Could they inspire others to join their cause? Approaching Maya's small office building, Lucy inhaled deeply, urging herself to embrace the challenge ahead. Inside, Maya greeted them with an intensity that mirrored their own. I'm glad you reached out, she began, her voice steady yet urgent. There's something I need to discuss before we proceed. The trio gathered around a small conference table, and Lucy sensed the atmosphere charged with tension. I've gathered information on how deep the deception goes, Maya revealed, her eyes ignited by urgency. The implications extend beyond one company. This is a network of corruption. Jonathan's eyebrows shot up. A network? We thought it was contained. You're saying it's much bigger? Much bigger, Maya confirmed. And we need to be strategic. Lucy's heart raced.
What do you propose?
How can we expose this without compromising safety? Maya sighed. If we approach this too aggressively, they will sweep us under the rug. We need to build a coalition, find others who suffered, and create a unified front. Only then can we enact change. As they strategized, Lucy felt the culmination of her journey hanging in the balance. This was her moment to prove that she could harness her ambition for justice. She proposed a grassroots movement to amplify their voices and sought out connections in the community who had suffered the same fate. Days turned into weeks, and the momentum they generated reverberated. As their project flourished, Lucy had grown into a recognized advocate. Her voice, once timid, now resonated across forums and discussions. Local news began to highlight her efforts, each feature solidifying her position as a pioneer for change. They carried stories that inspired countless others to reach out, narrating their own battles against corporate malfeasance. Then, one morning, a news alert caught her eye. It was a report of an impending exposé about the very corporate network they fought against, attributing the breakthrough investigations to the collaborative effort spearheaded by Lucy, Jonathan, and Maya. Her heart soared with pride, not just for the recognition, but for the realization that they had collectively conquered a system that stifled so many. In the weeks that followed, the tide drastically shifted. Voices previously silenced began to echo in unity as more individuals rose up, sharing their experiences. They built a foundation not just for advocacy but also for healing. Each story collected drew strength from the others, solidifying Lucy's belief that her ambition had transformed not just her life, but the lives of many around her. As the dust settled from revelations and reforms, Lucy recognized her evolution fully. She was no longer just a girl from Crestwood. Burdened by her past, she was a fervent believer in the power of truth. A leader who had achieved not just professional transformation but personal fulfillment. As she prepared for yet another community meeting, she met Jonathan's gaze. "We've come so far," she mused, her voice imbued with confidence and resolve. "We actually did it." Jonathan smiled, a mix of admiration and respect radiating from him. "We did. And I knew you would become this. You proved your own capabilities." Lucy paused, absorbing the weight of his words. "Thank you for believing in this with me. Together we unlocked our potential. Now we can continue to help others just as they found their voices." The journey had not only reshaped Lucy's path, but forged lasting ties, and entrusted her with a responsibility she embraced wholeheartedly. The small victory led to their greatest achievement, fostering a community unafraid to love, to share, and to pursue justice. As she stepped into the bright light that poured into the conference room, she felt a rush of clarity and fulfillment course through her veins. This was her new beginning, a lifelong commitment to changing lives, empowering voices, and pursuing the unwavering truth. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. Comment your reactions and theories about the ending. Share instantly this video with at least 5 friends who need to see this conclusion. You need to subscribe now. This is the moment to show your support. Don't wait even one more second to share.